Welcome back. You're watching HFO-TV. HFO-TV is co-sponsored by the construction, repair, and restoration firm J.R. Johnson, the real estate law firm Baljanik LLP, the tax deferral accommodator Butler Exchange Group, the mortgage banking firm Gantry Incorporated, and forensic building consultants providing building structural science services.
Welcome back to HFO TV. I'm Greg Frick, partner at HFO Investment Real Estate. Today we've got Adam Smith with us. He's one of our senior brokers. Thank you, Adam, for taking some time to speak with us.
Thank you, Greg.
Adam specializes a lot in the Valley. When we say the Valley, we're talking kind of Wilsonville, Salem, and South. So I thought it'd be great to have Adam come on here, kind of shine a little light on what he's seeing in that market as it compares to, maybe the Portland metropolitan area, which kind of gets all the press and headlines. But we're actually seeing a lot of demand and transaction volume and kind of where you cover. So maybe give the audience a little insight of what you've seen since, we're 18 months now into this pandemic, feel like we're kind of coming out.
Yeah.
I mean, what did you see in demand from an investment side?
Yeah, the Valley has always been kind of a, up until about, 24 months ago, sort of a neglected territory with not a whole lot of pressure from outside investors.
Right.
I think the Portland's black eye, for lack of a better term, has put a lot more pressure on the Valley. You have a lot of people chasing yield and also looking for jurisdictions that are not so heavily regulated.
Now, is this, because it used to be, in doing this, it used to be kind of you had your kind of Salem or Eugene or Medford, operators that were there, they would acquire a new project, but it wasn't necessarily new money. Is it new money that's coming in?
You're starting to see, people who would have traditionally been Portland MSA buyers.
Right.
They're looking at, Salem from a stability standpoint of the capital being there. You're seeing new investors target Oregon and Oregon State, student housing wise. And you're also seeing those folks who were traditional Salem-centric or Eugene-centric or Medford-centric. You're seeing their portfolio appetite grow from a boundary standpoint.
So looking at other...
Yeah, so you're seeing, people who would have, typically been, a 10-mile radius are now looking in other cities. So I think, over the past 2 years, we've seen the cap rates in the Valley drop from nearly 6 caps to, some of the more aggressive buys have been in the 5.25 cap range.
Now, in terms of, the product type, I mean, we'll hit on student housing a little bit. Are you, I think we're starting to see some development.
Yeah.
Newer product hitting the market. I mean, lenders are now, I think, there used to be, I'm only going to go so far south. You're seeing lenders now looking at these markets as well, which is helping.
Yeah, the Portland pipeline has slowed significantly, and I think that's, I'm not the best to discuss that, but what you're seeing is you are seeing folks who need to build, have to build. They are targeting. Salem has a very robust pipeline for development right now. I think the price of wood is obviously hurting that. I am anticipating both Oregon State and Albany to some degree to boom over the next 5 years from a build perspective, both from a need and a jurisdiction standpoint.
Interesting. And what do you see from, in terms of the operation side? I mean, we've COVID, I know there's concessions up here with new construction. Are you seeing, how are your owners and clients telling you about how they've navigated this past 18 months? In terms of the again, they're not heavily as regulated as they are in some of the major metropolitan areas, but there is some of that there. Maybe shine a little light on that.
Yeah, I think that COVID was hard for most folks, most operators, that is. I think what has come out of it from a Valley perspective, Eugene and South was very, did not have a whole lot of carnage from delinquency standpoint.
Right.
The fires last fall unfortunately destroyed a lot of homes, and people are not moving and are paying their rent so that they can stay there. Roseburg, Medford, Klamath Falls, no one is, there's very little delinquency. You are seeing pockets of certain areas within Salem and Springfield specifically struggle, but by and large, I don't think we're seeing, the 15% delinquency that we are seeing some
other
up farther north. Yeah.
Got it. And then in terms of we talked about Eugene, Corvallis,
Yeah.
Oregon State.
Right.
We've heard different things with student housing.
Yes.
Which again, when this thing happened, started in March. Schools didn't know what they're going to do. Are students coming?
Yeah.
Are they not? Are they living on? Are they living off? I know you're involved in a couple student housing
Yeah.
transactions. Maybe shine, kind of look at what's happened there and kind of what's changed since where we were in March of 2020 to where we are today.
Sure. From a product type, student housing was disproportionately affected. The international students, by and large, left as the pandemic began, and that created a lot of heartache for operators and owners throughout the summer and then into fall. Starting fall term in September, we were seeing vacancy rates hover in the 15 to even 25%.
Which is very unusual for that.
Very unusual. Oregon and Oregon State both hover around 3 to 5% vacancy throughout the school year. What the trend that we saw, a lot of conversations were had around the Thanksgiving table around kids needing to get out of the house. And so winter term starting in January, all those projects that were hurting for vacancy leased up pretty quickly. Going forward, both Oregon State and Oregon have both promised to require all students to be vaccinated for fall term. I won't speculate on what that'll do to occupancy, but I think that is the right move, and I think you're going to see most projects get back up and running at 2019 levels come this fall.
So they're expecting demand from a housing standpoint to kind of coincide back to with them opening.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there was a Yardi Matrix survey that was done first quarter. U of O was struggling for pre-lease on Class A. By and large, that was due to the lack of demand for 4 and 5 bedroom units. That's been a unit type that has really been suffering, just given proximity to your tenants for COVID reasons.
Right. And also Eugene had, of the sub-markets we just discussed,
Yeah.
they did have a lot of supply come in on the private student housing side.
Correct. Yeah. Eugene is arguably, the most supply-heavy city for student housing.
Right.
And given that, we are seeing some pain, but not nearly as bad as we did last year.
And then I know we've talked about some of the other markets. I mean, are you seeing, what are you seeing from the standpoint of existing owners? Are they, trying to acquire more? And we brought that up. Are you seeing some maybe saying, making life changes and getting out, opening up opportunities of, maybe some long-held family assets?
Yeah, I can't speak to, any specific city, but I think across the board you're seeing, the mom and pop owners who have one asset. 2020 was an eye-opener for them.
Right.
From a management standpoint, as well as from a owning during a pandemic, and has been hard. I think you're going to see the average portfolio size grow. I think you're going to see a lot of folks look elsewhere from a property type. I think you're going to see a lot more people trade out of multifamily, especially on those who had a horizon of 2 to 5 years before they were done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think it fast-tracked kind of people's decision matrix.
Totally.
Of what do I want to
Yes.
do? How do I want? And I think like you brought up, I think the one-offs, they own a single property that they've kind of been handling, or somebody's been handling it for them.
Yeah.
I think COVID has brought up the discussion at the table as to, do we want to be in this? What's our exit? What do we want to do?
Correct.
Yeah.
Self-managed properties, by and large, were challenging too, and I think you're going to see those properties that were handled by, that were one-offs. I think that we'll see those come to market.
Now I know from a transactional standpoint, lending's very important.
Yeah.
I mean, have you seen a change in terms of how lenders are looking at some of these markets where, like I said, opposed 5-10 years ago, maybe they're not going to look at there. I mean, what's kind of you hearing from that standpoint?
Yeah, from a lending standpoint, I think the Valley has gotten a lot more attention. I think people are more risk adverse to going further south. The traditional 25-point basis jump in interest rate is subsiding to some degree. I think that there's more optimism outside Portland. And lenders are getting more aggressive than they were 12 and 18 months ago even.
For that same product type?
For that same product type,
Right.
yeah.
Well, in the end, again, in terms of, I know we've done some stuff in Bend, Central Oregon, further south. I mean, I think we're seeing that expansion thing, even with these, with the positive demographics, positive migration, positive rent growth.
Right.
The construction costs are still, relatively high. So, you're not going to see this over demand that we've seen in kind of these major markets.
Correct. Yeah. The rents are still trailing by 25-30%, and construction is by and large the same cost. So you're not seeing a huge flurry of build, but I think that is coming down the pipeline when certain cities put barriers of entry from a standpoint of new construction.
Well, and we've talked about this too, just the ability within, like say, Portland, being able to do garden style. There's
Correct.
just not that many sites that you can do a standard garden style apartment.
Correct.
Whereas in these, these outlying areas, you still can. I mean, I don't think it's going to pencil typically for a 5/1 or 10-story where the costs are really out of line. So, I still think we'll have some insulation from oversupply in these markets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to kind of shine light. If people have questions about what's going on in the Valley, Adam's the guy to talk to within the office. And again, we'll see you again on HFO-TV.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Build your legacy with HFO. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information.